Welcome to Clay Mastermind with Don Grant. Mental excellence and industry insights. Brought to you by the Clay Lab, your ultimate podcast for mastering the mental game of clay shooting and gaining exclusive insights from the top minds in the industry. Join us as we dive into the strategies of elite athletes, uncover the secrets to peak performance, and share powerful techniques to enhance your shooting skills. Plus, get behind-the-scenes access to the leaders and innovators who are shaping the future of the clay shooting industry. Get ready to elevate your game, sharpen your focus, and gain insider knowledge from the best in the business. Let's get started. Here's your host, Don Grant.
Okay, I am excited to have Bill Elliot here with me, and he's got some cool things going on in his shooting life right now. I know he's going to touch on some of that. So thanks for joining me, Bill.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, we've been
I've been
talking
looking forward to this.
Yeah, we've been talking since Ohio State about it. So for anybody who doesn't know who you are, let's wow them right now. Tell folks who you are.
So I grew up in Northeast Ohio. I went to school and graduated in a class of 70 students in a town called Avon, and started working young at a club called Avon Sportsman's Club. I was that kid that sat inside of the trap house, and when it was freezing cold, I was placing targets on the trap machine, and it was really cool. A lot of the people that were around me that would come and shoot, they left a lasting impression on me that I knew someday I wanted to get back to it. The way, I love my parents. They provide shelter, security, you name it. But and I know this game can be expensive. So back then I really didn't have the means to do that, and did it as much as I could, like at the club. But after that, it really was after I was done working there. And I'm working at Taco Bell, and I'm working at TGI Fridays, and I'm mowing lawns, and I didn't have the means to do it. But when I went to the Ohio State University, graduated from there, and I was like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to graduate and start making money and shoot. So I graduated college, I get this big check, this salary for $35,000, and I'm thinking, I can't wait to shoot. Well, when you're paying back student loans at $385 a month, plus a $600 a month rent, plus a $250 car payment back then.
You're aging yourself.
Yeah.
$600 a month rent.
I know,
Holy.
right. And I'm like, I can't wait to shoot. Well, then I started shooting, and I realized I couldn't afford it like I wanted to. So I was also a sponsored skateboarder then too. So traveling the country, skateboarding, and really competing at a high level with that, and filming videos, and just trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And then finally, it was at about the age of, let's say 32, 33. I was like, look, my body can't take it anymore. Let's start shooting. So I know this is going to sound really interesting, I'll say, but I don't think I really shoot because I love shooting. I mean, I do, but I love competing more. Everything I've ever done in life, I've always competed. So at the age of 48, it gives me this opportunity to compete in something I enjoy.
Yeah. No, that's not weird. I think everybody listening has that element. It's a thing.
Yeah.
The competitive element that keeps you coming back too, doesn't it?
It does. It's I love when somebody comes up to me at a shoot and they say, Bill, you really take this seriously, don't you? And I'm like, yeah, I don't spend $20,000 on something to not be serious.
Yeah, right?
I mean,
so what are some of your accomplishments in this sport? Some highlights, and then we'll get into some more details.
I won the Ohio State Championship in 2023. I'm a level 3 NSCA certified instructor, which I would challenge anyone to go through that process. It's very rigorous. It's the curriculum is well done. It's been an awesome journey. Placed in the top 10 at the Northeast Regional. I think the biggest accomplishment though is being able to be married, have that great relationship with my wife, have a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old at home, and trying to find a way to make this all work.
Totally relatable.
You know?
Yeah. So you waited a long time in your life to start shooting. It never left your mind, huh? Or did you shoot a little bit here and there through those?
I would say I would shoot a little bit here and there because, my dad was always into dogs, and then I would come home from college and, he would say, "Hey, Billy, you want to go shoot some skeet or some sporting clays?" And
Well, what'd you want to go to school for?
yeah,
And then what did you
so
do for a career? Because this has a lot to do with your
yeah,
brain and what you're bringing to the field.
yeah. So I thought I wanted to be a lobbyist, and I graduated from Ohio State, and then that didn't happen. So I came back home, and I'm like, look, you got to start working. So I started substitute teaching, and I really liked it. So I became a senior government teacher, U.S. history, and then I went on and got my master's in special ed. So I was running like Down syndrome, autistic units, emotional disturbance, you name it, the gamut. And then I started a tutoring business, and then I became a director at a vocational high school, and then I became a university dean. And then it was finally at the age of 42, my wife runs a nursing home. She's a director there, and we're both banging on the clock. Our hours are crazy. And I'm like, something's got to give. So I called her up. I knew she was out with her girlfriend for a birthday, and I was like, hey, babe, I got a great idea. Why don't I start my own business? So,
Ooh, that freed up your time.
yeah, so I'm 42. I got a little one at home. I got another one, but I never wanted to look back saying, what if? I mean, I
Yeah.
could always go back, and I wouldn't change it for the world right now.
And what is your business?
So Elliott coaching. So basically I coach out of Hillendale Club, South Cuyahoga, Airport Ridge, Cardinal Shooting Center, and working with those clubs. So it's been great.
And you said no regrets. That's the
No.
things that you said you did for a living. Holy. I mean, first of all, working with disability, those with disabilities, super amount of patience, calmness.
If you ask my wife, she would say, no way.
Oh my God. You burnt yourself out at work and then you didn't have it when you got home.
Yeah.
But then all very like administrative, executive level, and that tends to end up meaning you're probably pretty analytical and measuring and such like that. So how have you seen that affect you in your shooting? Are you the type that tends to want to, be very analytical and measure, lead and calculate?
Yeah. Yeah, I would say so. I've always believed in the mantra specific focus equals specific results, vague focus equals vague results. So, just like when you put a plane up in the air, you run this check down, right? And that check down has all these different variables like angle, speed, distance, hold point one, break point one, hold point two, break point two, all those things. And I found myself just questioning that on every single shot. And I found myself like an angst in me that was constantly saying, come on, Bill, let's shoot. Come on. No, just hold on. Just visualize a little bit more and mark that hold point really, really even further. And found it almost got me in trouble.
I imagine.
So I think some people can get away with that, but I can't. I'm as ADHD as they come. I'm throwing things up here and there. And I found that I was overanalyzing, and overanalyzing was causing discomfort and lack of trust. And yeah.
Yeah, it sounded like some doubt. So what did you do about that? Because that's definitely part of that personality that you'd had most of your life.
Yeah, so I shot probably one of the worst rounds of my life because I had Brandon Powell behind me at the stage shoot. And on every station, he was roaring up behind me saying, you're overthinking it. You're analyzing. You're over top. You're behind. And I'm like, looking back and I'm like, look, it's not that I'm over analyzing or overthinking. It's just the smell of your cologne is just breathing down my neck.
That can be bad.
So, but I also knew, what I've had lessons with, 4 lessons with David Radulovich, who's a good friend of mine, Pat Litsky, good friend of mine, Don Curry, who's been a great mentor, Matt Pudeman, couple with Wendell Cherry, Todd Hitch, and they were all valuable. Like every single one of those people gave me something along the way that's part of the process. But when I took that lesson with Brandon, it was just a little bit different. It was like, dude, you just need to shoot. You don't trust yourself. You have this sense of fear in yourself that you don't need to have. You're a good shot. Just go in and get it done. quit thinking so much. You got the background knowledge.
Yeah. Just shoot the damn thing.
Yeah. And I think it's easier said than done because, like, I don't think you can say that to a brand new shooter. You can't just throw a baby in the pool and say, hey, do me a favor, kick your legs and arms, you know, or
I
you
mean,
can't say to.
that's the way it used to get done, right? That's the school of tough love. Just throw them in and they'll figure it out eventually. But you can't, like, put somebody at a stick shift and, well, you can. They'll figure it out eventually, maybe. But there's an easier road, right? Like, it's definitely ways of learning things.
Or like when somebody used to say to me, look at the bird, Bill. And I'd be like, look, I'm not Darth Vader.
Yeah.
Like, this thing's not just going to break. I got to have a sense of something. And then, but now I can do that, I would say.
Yeah, there's so much more to it, isn't there? Like, one of the examples I like to give is, think about if you're in the grocery store and you see somebody you've known for a long time, or a little old lady, and she's like, how you doing, Bill? I haven't seen you forever. How's your wife? How's your kids? You know, and you can look at her and you can answer her. You can nod your head and be like, and give her just, oh, everybody's fine, everything's good. But in your brain, conscious mind, you're thinking about your shopping list. Like, oh, I got to get spaghetti sauce and I got to get some beef. And, oh, yeah, don't forget the bottle of water. So you're not really totally focused on her, but you can fake it. Like, you can look at her and you can be thinking of something else, and you can be nodding, and you can even say, yep, they're all good. And that's a great way to recognize when you're really practicing focus or not, because you can also deliberately go, let me pay attention and actually have this conversation with this person versus thinking about something else. And that's what I believe is the difference between just looking at the target and actually seeing it. Like, being present with it is very different than just looking at it. Another thing it reminds me of is, like, when you step outside and there's birds singing, most of the time we don't listen to them. You can hear them, but you don't listen to them. And that's what I think people really mean, whether they know it or not. Like, if an instructor tells you to see the target, I think they mean everything else that I just said. Like, it's all encompassing, like all of your energy and all your focus and all your attention. And that's when everything disappears around you.
I would agree 100%. Just finding a way to be present, and, you know, whether it's some type of trigger or some type of cue, but everyone, like I always say with human beings, A plus B doesn't equal C. So I think as a coach, as a shooter, you have to be flexible to what you don't know.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Because, like, what you don't know can hurt you. And I think there's, you know, if you're somebody who has an infinite mind and you're always trying to get better and better, you got to try things out. You got to see if they work. You got to stay the course and see if you're leaving it better than you found it.
Yeah. Again, mindfulness and being deliberate, because most people will just, it's like punching the time clock every day. They just do the same thing and repeat and go back and do the same thing. And you don't really evolve if you do that. That's, again, you know, going back to just shooting. It's, if somebody's not paying attention to the misses and they're just getting mad about the misses, then they're missing an opportunity to learn and grow. Like, the exact thing they want is to improve. Mm-hmm. But if all they're doing is getting mad with the miss, then they're missing the opportunity to improve. And to me, it's like priceless. The miss is priceless because there's information there. And in order to evolve and to continue to get better, you got to stop and look at the details without being pissed off about it.
Yeah.
You know, just be deliberate along that way. So you said no regrets. You're enjoying being self-employed as an instructor.
Mm-hmm.
So that is going good for you? Like, you love it? You love helping people and doing the instruction?
I do. And I'm actually putting on I do some level 1 courses and mentor a couple young coaches that are coming up along the way, because, I mean, you are running a business. Ultimately, nobody goes into business to say, oh, I can't wait to lose money and go out of business. So there's been people along the way that really helped me out. And I think it's going awesome. I think trying to figure out how to grow it and how to expand on it is challenging, because people are always like, well, how are you going to scale your business? And I'm like, well, you gotta figure that out. it's great because I believe there's three things you look for in a job: flexibility, finance, and purpose. And I kind of have all three of this with these, especially having little ones at home and being able to be the best dad and the best husband. Like it's a great position I'm in.
Yeah. What challenges have you come across along the way of being self-employed or instructor, and what have you noticed and that you've worked through?
What haven't I worked? The things you work through that, when I got rid of the salary, like,
Oh, yeah.
like, holy cow, this is real. I had to believe in myself a little bit more, and that's hard, especially if, I don't know, when you're working for somebody else, you get to rely on them a little bit, right? For business
sure.
development, or so you had to believe in yourself a little bit. And then time management is very challenging. I think you lay your head down on the pillow at night, and unfortunately, you just don't get to shut it off. And
Yeah.
and I had to learn how to do that while being, the best husband and the best dad you can be, but yet running a business.
Yeah, there aren't really hours. It's not like punching the time clock. And I've observed for myself as an entrepreneur, there's definitely pros and cons to it. I do believe the pros outweigh the cons because that's why I'm still
Totally.
doing it. But
100%.
I'm really well known to be working, 16-hour days or whatever. And I love what I do. So it's easy to, keep going and not turn it off. But it takes effort to decide, how am I going to spend my days, because I could spend them the whole time doing this thing that I love. And so how are you with the balance? Do you stop working at a certain time?
It's my wife is always like, "You're always on that damn phone," and I'm like, "Well, that's business." I try to. I think the biggest thing that you can do is try to keep a schedule. Like, if I don't write it down, if it's not in an email, it doesn't exist. And that's big for me.
Yeah, Joe says that to me a lot about my phone, but my phone's it is literally a little mini computer, right? So
it is.
We'll go fishing. I'm like, I don't mind. I mean, how many people can say they're working while they're fishing out in the boat in the middle of this beautiful marshland? I'm happy. I'm not upset about it. Sometimes I'll bring my laptop out there if I really know I have something I have to really work on. And I'm like, you just fish away, honey. I'm enjoying the view while I'm working.
I've always believed if you can touch it and get it done, right? If I can just send a quick text back and reply like, "Hey, not sure right now, but I'll get back to you tomorrow for sure. Thanks." Like, that's just, that follow-up is so key. And I feel all those years of working in public service, if I didn't get back to people, if I didn't email back, I was held accountable by a supervisor. And I think that type of business acumen and that customer service and customer relationship really helps in this industry.
Yeah, for sure. Because there isn't necessarily that kind of structure and administrative level of taking care of things. It's a lot of times it's a trailer down a dirt road.
Right.
The guys are just hanging out and then shooting some targets.
Yep.
Yeah, I do believe that a support system is really important, and to be able to shoot well and to be able to go out there and shoot and with your mind clear. So tell me what you've observed about that and your relationship with your wife and how that helps you in doing what you are doing.
Well, first of all, I wish you could see my library of books. So dating back to 15, 20 years ago, just constantly reading. Whether I could memorize Zen golf to you probably, or, golf is not a game of perfect, the golf of your dreams, 7 Days in Utopia, Mind Gym. I mean, you name it, The $1 Trillion Coach. I mean, you name it. I've read them all. And I loved it. I still do love it. I just don't have the time that I have. And those were kind of like supports for me, Lead, for God's sakes. That's one of my favorite books I ever read. Those, just that constant feedback, stoic words, but none of that, I don't think, can trump the relationship that you have with your spouse, because it's so important that when you go to the range that day or when you go to practice, that you're good. And to me, the support that she gives me in this game and the support that I give back to her in her profession. Like, it's so key. And you got to have that candor, right? Like, hey, didn't you just shoot 2 tournaments last weekend? Yeah, I swear this, I'm going to shoot one this weekend and I'll be home by this time. But then you miss that opportunity with your kids too. So it's really, really important to have that support. And I look at guys like Anthony Matarese, or he's got 4 kids, and Don Curry's got 3 kids. And I think you have how many? 2?
I have 2, but they're 25 and 27.
But still, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you raised them, and I see, it's a balance, and you got to be there.
Yeah, you do. And if there's something challenging going on, you got to be able to feel like you've handled it the best you could for that moment, and then turn it off and be able to focus on your shooting. Or not shoot, like, depending on how serious the situation is.
Yeah, I mean, the hardest thing I ever went through for 3 years, I had a headache every single day for 3 years, every single day, trying to figure it out, chasing it down a rabbit hole, sleep apnea, just a ton of stuff going on. And that was like 4 years ago now. So I chased it for 3 years and just worrying about my career, trying to figure everything out, but just knowing that there is light at the end of that, and you just got to keep trying to figure it out, Bill.
Yeah. So a lot of what we're talking about does pertain to the mind, and almost all those books you mentioned. So it sounds like you're a pretty avid studier of mind stuff. What's your belief on the phrase "it's 90% mental"?
I do believe that. I believe it's like it's a Venn diagram, right? I'm trying to figure out myself, where is the difference between emotional and mental, right? I'm trying to figure out, like, what's the difference there, because for years when I thought of mental, I would think of emotional disturbance, bipolar, schizophrenia, like those types of mental, emotional
diagnoses, mental.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Okay.
And because of my background, right?
Right.
And then, but I realized when you step in that box, it is 100% mental. Like last weekend, and I felt really good, and I felt like, you got this. You've trained for this. Let's roll. Let's go. Shoot like it doesn't matter when it matters the most. Let's go. And it's huge.
Yeah. But it's like, in my opinion, because there are a lot of different opinions on this, the mechanics, like, everybody knows that's been in the field, or actually it's any sport, you have to do the mechanics a lot ahead of time. Like, you need that repetition, especially if you start something new. You really need to get the practice in for the repetition, so that those mechanics are in what's called your subconscious mind. Then you're free consciously, but the problem then happens is then the conscious mind can be thinking of all these other different things, worrying, doubting, second guessing, overthinking. But what happens if you haven't got the repetition of the mechanics is then you're overthinking those things at the competition, and that's then occupying your conscious mind in a way that's not effective for performance. So ideally, you have great mechanics, or mechanics you're at least working on, and you've been practicing those ahead of time, and then you're bringing that to the table. You're bringing that into the shotgun stand, and that ideally is more subconscious or intuitive. And we all know, if you're thinking about your mechanics, then that's going to be a problem if you're overthinking them. Different from being mindful, like, let me make sure that I'm mounting my gun all the way. There might be some things that somebody's working on that they can be more deliberate about. But if you're bringing your mechanics to that table, ideally already repeated over and over and over again, then the only thing that can screw you up at that point is the examples you gave: overthinking it, measuring it, second guessing, doubt, looking at it, don't do it yet, I'm not ready yet, and fear. And to me, that's a lot of why they say it's 90% mental, like the competition of it. But emotion and thought, just an FYI, I'm sure you've read some brilliant books there, so maybe you've come across this already, but there's a cause and effect relationship between your mind and your body. Emotion is actually the sensation that we feel in our body. So when you're labeling something like I'm worried or I'm scared or whatever, that emotion is actually energy. It's a sensation in the cells of your body. We're just labeling it with a word, but it's a cause and effect relationship. So you have your thought first. So a certain thought you're having, that's then causing that reaction in your body. And so to me, if you're looking at it's 90% mental, well, if I'm feeling scared or anxious or stressed or worried, if I'm feeling any of those things, then I'm having cruddy thoughts. It's more like a signal, and you can start paying attention to your body to signal to you that you're having crappy thoughts, because then it's the misuse of your mind, because the mind, like a smartphone or whatever, is extremely powerful. Most people don't know how to use it. You can be, again, deliberate about how you use it. So it's the misuse of it when you're thinking poorly. And so it's almost like that cause and effect relationship can help you to pay more attention to what's the quality of my thoughts right now. And there I go again. Right? There I go worrying again. There I go second guessing or doubting or whatever. So
I totally agree.
Have you ever been in the zone?
So I would say last weekend, definitely. I would say everything just felt so natural. I felt like, hey, I can actually talk to somebody walking station to station. It doesn't have to be super quiet. Like, hey, let's talk about what we're doing for dinner, or let's talk about how the weekend's going, and be able to still be a human being and play around a sporting place, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it felt so natural. I felt like when I stepped in the box, it was kind of like, all right, there it is. There's the line on that one. I'm gonna give it a front of that one pretty good. There's the next one. It's a shallow line, not much lead on that thing. Let's go. And it was just happening. And what was funny is I left my gun at home. I had to run my butt home to go get my gun. I was running late for the shoot, no warm up, got there 5 minutes to spare, and
Oh,
it
gosh.
just happened,
Yeah.
So, but I definitely felt good.
What words would you use to describe the zone state?
Offensive, intense, deliberate, but chill, focused, but fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's,
Time seems to fly by.
yeah.
It's actually so enjoyable that people wish they could keep going. They're like, oh, but I'm on the last station. Everything disappears around you. So it really is like that kind of like just see the target kind of thing. It's happening as part of the zone.
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't looking at, okay, what's the angle? What's the speed? What's the distance? Hold point one, break point one, hold point two, break point two. I was just kind of like letting it go.
Yeah, letting go, not trying too hard, not measuring or analyzing. So then that's more of
not trying to make it happen.
Yeah. Yeah. So how many times would you say you've been in the zone? Is it a lot?
I would say, I feel like a good amount. I feel like when you're in the zone, you're trusting.
Another
That trust, I believe, comes from training without the fear of missing while training. I think if you train with intent and if you train deliberately, good things will happen. Like, acing your algebra quiz or your social studies quiz isn't typically a phenomena. It comes from hard work.
Right.
And I think that deliberate work, that deliberate studying, but being able to let it go on the day of is really challenging.
It is. You're in competition and you're not doing as well as you'd like. You just want to quit or give up or be done. So you let go and then you start shooting better.
I had to it was a few tournaments ago. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to quit running my shot routine and I'm just going to shoot. And ran like 3 stations in a row and came back. And that was kind of like that epiphany where I was like, yeah, maybe you're overworking. Maybe you're not letting it happen.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a big thing. And you've already said it a few times. So the letting go. When I first started working with some of the PGA Tour guys, I immediately had like a dozen that I was working with. And there was a few others that had heard about me. And one of them said, well, if if what you're teaching is relaxation and all that, it's not going to work for me because I do better when I'm upset. Like I do better when I'm fired up and upset. And when he first said that to me, I was thrown off because nobody had ever said that to me before. But over time, I was like, you know what? If the person could capture whatever they're doing whenever, so what he was considering getting amped up and super focused and, going to make it happen because he was so upset. Really what it was the correction of more focused, more intent, more deliberate, right? And so what I started teaching people is you don't have to get angry to be more intent, more deliberate, more focused. You can learn what these things are and then you apply them at the beginning, not only when you're upset. And that's the same with the letting go. Because it's like a phenomenon. There's a lot of people that say, well, I just wanted to give up and all of a sudden I'm shooting better. And that's the same concept. Like if you could look at what the little pieces are, what happened after you decided I want to quit or I'm done, right? You let go. You weren't over analyzing. You weren't trying too hard. You weren't being too careful or too cautious, all those things. So learning how to identify those and do them on the front end would be ideal.
Yeah, I think it's hard in our game because like there's this misconception that, well, I don't think it's a misconception, but it's just you almost have to be neutral.
Yeah.
Right. You better be neutral. Like if you show any emotion, or if you don't show enough emotion, then what's wrong with that guy? Like he's so it's such a fine line, and I think it's we're still human beings first, and it's quite a dichotomy. That's for sure.
Yeah, being neutral, being able, and I feel like one of the ways to be neutral is to not think of it as bad. Don't think of it as horrible that you just missed. Like neutralize it so that you can get the data out of it. Same thing with the opposite. Like if somebody's doing really well, because people can fall apart on Sunday all the time in sports where the final winner is Sunday afternoon and they're doing great all the way up to them, but then they just become too careful or they try too hard or they're thinking, oh my God, I could win this. And again, that happened a lot with the PGA guys because we're talking about $1 million. There's $1 million on the table on Sunday and the pressure and the thoughts can just really screw them up. And again, going back to the 90% mental, that's not mechanics. Like the mechanics didn't just disappear.
Right.
You still know how to drive a stick shift, even if on Sunday you were driving a stick shift on Saturday. Yeah. And so
it's like that guy that says, well, I shot that course on Tuesday and I saw HOA on Saturday was a 93. Well, I shot a 91. Well, it was a Tuesday.
Yeah. Right. Without the added elements, the elements that mess with your mind. So have you ever experienced gut feeling, intuition, like inner guidance that kind of helps you to make decisions with your shooting or with your, as an instructor with your business or even other things in your life?
Yeah, I think experience has been the best teacher for me. For example, let's say you start off on station 1 and around the sporting clays and you go 2 out of 6. Well, I have places I can go to in my schema and my background knowledge that I can go to and say, hey, Bill, remember that one time you ran a course out like this? You got this. Stay in it all the way till the end. Or there's times when there was one lady back in the day when I didn't return a phone call to her, and boy, did she ring me out, and she let me have it. And that was the best lesson I ever learned.
Yeah.
And I never did that again. I always made it a point to call people back. And so I feel like lessons are best learned by the things we've gone through, right? If you're training and you're behind the bird, you got to change. You got to do something about it. I don't know. I think those lessons are just so key in life.
Yeah. Another element of the zone that I've heard people say is it doesn't even feel like them pulling the trigger. It feels instinctual or intuitive. And so
100%.
That's why I was curious if you've noticed intuition or instinct and intuitiveness in other areas, if that's helped you make decisions. Because that's another thing that I teach people, because I see that as an important element of the zone, is it doesn't feel like me. It's, yeah. So
I can tell you, since I switched to this new shooting style, I'm shooting 95% swing through on everything. I feel like the handcuffs have come off. It's crazy. I feel like I'm shooting free. I'm shooting natural of who I am as a shooter. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong. It just feels good and natural for me. And it's not going to be like that for everybody. And um, I I don't like. I go back to, you got to figure out what doesn't work for you before you know what does work for you almost. And I'm not a top 25 pro in the country. I'm just someone who's trying to learn, trying to get there. I'm really confident right now with what I'm learning. And I feel instinctive when I'm shooting. It's definitely much more free when I shoot.
Yeah. Yeah.
More
Nice.
instinctual.
You said that you're not like in the top 25 or whatever. So how do you feel that affects you as an instructor? 'Cause it sounds like you're doing really well as an instructor. So 'cause
Yeah.
I've heard other people say, I have to win in order to be a good instructor. Not to be good, but for people to come to me for lessons. So what are your thoughts around that? Because apparently you've debunked that.
Right. Well, first of all, there's enough to go around.
Yeah.
I mean, 10 people in the country can't possibly teach every single shooter out there that's there, you know. I remember I was on with Justin Barker. He said, Bill, like, how do you feel when somebody says, well, you haven't really won anything? And I was like, well, yeah, right. It's a journey, and I know it's coming. I know it takes time. I know as a coach, it's really important that you have strong follow-up, that you understand how people learn auditorily, kinesthetically, visually. And I believe my background, and when I went through, like in my master's degree and all, in special education and all that, and just understanding people as a whole, like, we're not CNC machines where A plus B equals C. These are human beings. And I think you have to have an awareness about that. And there are some, phenomenal coaches out there. Taken lessons with Anthony. I try to take lessons with all. I want to take a lesson with Will Fennell, like, because I never have. I want to see what Will has. I'd like to take a lesson with Dan Carlisle. I'd like to, whoever it is out there, and just see how they coach. But I don't worry when someone says to me, like, well, you're not one of. It used to bother me. It used to bother me when somebody said, hey, Bill, did you see what such and such posted about you on Facebook? And I look at it, I'm like, oh, that son of a, what is he thinking? I can't believe, I'm calling him up. It's not even worth it,
Yeah. I've been around that block a few times.
Well, if only they knew what they didn't know about me, they'd have way more to post about me.
Yeah, right.
But they don't know enough, so.
Well, I definitely like your attitude about it. I've had people say, well, you're not a competitive shooter, so how can you help somebody with their mind game? I'm like, because I know the mind. I mean, to me, it's like common sense. I mean, I went to school for it. I've had a private practice for over 25 years. Like, I understand worry, doubt, fears, and things like that. When I helped VJ Singh, back in 2008, I helped him win the FedEx Cup championship. Yeah, and I worked with him for like 3 straight days, and I was at his home, and at the probably 6 hours into the first day, he said, I need to show you what happens when I'm putting. And I'm like, well, I'm learning from talking to you what's going on. And he was like, well, let me show you. Let's go to the putting range. I'm like, I really don't need to see, because the mental game is what you're thinking and how you're feeling. And having conversation with somebody, I can pick that up, right? But he kept thinking, well, and then he would say, but do you golf? Have you putted before? Like, he kept feeling like I couldn't understand or relate if I didn't do those things. And eventually he ended up getting his putter anyways to show me what he was doing mentally when he was putting. But it's like the brain is the brain is the brain. It doesn't matter if you're golfing or skateboarding, shooting, with your wife, with your kids. It doesn't, it's all the same. And I feel like your experience, your degree, your experience, your professions, what you bring to the table comes from all that knowledge and insight. And instructors you've been to and going through the training process of being an instructor, to me, that makes sense that you absolutely would be a great instructor. You have all the information because not everybody's a teacher either, right? I'm sure you've noticed that. It's at the very beginning of this call, we talked about that competitive element. Well, there's a teacher element too. See, I have a teacher element. I can't stop not teaching. Like I keep teaching. I'm teaching you right now, right? I can't not teach. And but some people don't have that. And they still might be a top shooter and then they're trying to teach, but they don't have the teacher element thing. And then they're not necessarily that great at it. So I definitely have seen that in you as well. You got that good teacher element.
I appreciate that. Thank you. And I feel like that's probably one of the most challenging parts about this profession is there is no professional development out there for people that want to grow. The only way you get professional development is you go and spend $1,200 or $1,500 on a lesson, and hopefully you learn something in that lesson, and hopefully the individual that you're taking the lesson from has enough confidence in his or herself to say, well, don't go use that. And to me, it's like, well, if it's something great, then it's an interesting dichotomy because like if you have this great pizza in town with this great recipe, you don't want to share the recipe, but it's that good. And so it's really challenging in that sense.
Yeah, it really is.
I'll tell you I remember at the end of my last lesson with Brandon, I was like, hey man, I really want to thank you for sharing your knowledge with me and really, really pushing me hard. And he said, well, you're never going to beat me with a shotgun. And I said, yeah, but I'll always be a better businessman than you. So let's be friends with benefits.
Oh boy. Yeah, that'll work out.
Yeah. That was great. It's great.
But you're having that information. And it's so cool that these instructors know that you're an instructor. We're still teaching you what they have, knowing not only will that help your shooting, but it's going to help you as an instructor as well. And taking the bits and pieces and going through that experience as a student, you're learning the journey of a student so you can turn around and then instruct the students even better. I think that's great.
I think what you're trying to do ultimately is like wrap yourself in all this and immerse yourself in it. Like I talk to Brett Seibert probably once every 2 weeks just about industry stuff. And I have a coach or I talk to other coaches all the time. I talk to Chad Roberts. We have a group of club managers that we meet and talk about industry stuff, kind of like an advisory board. I think the industry is looking for that kind of stuff. Like we're not all on this lone little island and there's enough to go around.
There always is. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I really do like that attitude and not feeling like you're in competition with the other instructors. Or I've had that I've had that recently related to the podcast. I'm not in competition with any other podcast. I'm just doing what I like to do and talking to people and putting it out there. It doesn't mean anything about anybody else that's doing it also. And I feel that way about my shotgun club also. There's one 20 minutes away. There's another hour and a half. There's another 2 hours away. I'd love for my customers to go to those places. Like can't even imagine shooting at one place because you or have to. Like that doesn't even make sense to me. Like go shoot everywhere. Have fun.
Yeah.
You don't have to hide it from me. I love it that you went there.
Hey, Bill, is it okay if I go and take a lesson with some? Yeah, go.
Yeah.
Go absorb as much as you can. In fact, maybe bring back something that you can show me that they pointed out in you that I didn't notice.
Nice.
Right?
Now, I have to ask you though, are there pros and cons to going to a lot of different instructors? Like, have you ever noticed that maybe in your students or even in yourself?
I would say ultimately you're trying to, like, at the beginning of this game, I feel like you're trying to figure, there's just so much information out there and every coach is going to shorten the learning curve for you in some form or another. So if you got imagine being a professional football player, you played for somebody in high school and then you went and played for Nick Saban in college and then you went and played for Pete Carroll in the pros. Like they're so different, right? But I think ultimately you're trying to formulate who you are as a shooter, because if you are constantly letting someone direct who you are who you have to be as a shooter, I don't think you're going to get to that best version of you. If you can take a little bit from, I know Braxton is coaching, or if you can take a little bit from Dawn, or if you can take a little bit from Anthony, and then hone that in, say, you know what? I like the way this guy coaches me. I like the way he drives me. I like the way she pushes me. I'm good. I'm gonna run with this person for a little bit.
Yeah.
But then there's people, I'm from this school, or I'm from this school, and I'm like, that's cool too. I'm not gonna discount that.
I feel like the potential con would be almost like grasping at straws. Like, I'm going to this other instructor because that's the one that's going to help me, and I'm just throwing in the towel and everything else I've learned. And then, I don't know, there's like a feeling of putting all their eggs in one basket. And then a few months later, if they're not winning or whatever their goal was, then they're going to somebody else. But it feels differently than what you're describing. Like, what you're talking about is go there and learn a little bit here and see what works for you there, and then go to the next one and learn a little bit there. And the whole time you're learning about yourself. So you're kind of like compiling bits and pieces of information to figure out who you are and what works for you, versus I'm going to this one because this is going to be my saving grace, and then upset when it's not. And so I'm going to this one next, right? It's kind of a different approach to the same thing.
Yeah. And I think your coach has to be committed to you also. Like, there has to be like, hey, if I give you a shout, would you mind taking my call and just walking me through? Because I think that's the difference between a coach and an instructor.
Mm-hmm.
A coach really, really wants what's best for his or her students. An instructor is somebody that just flies around, drives around, and just say, charge, let's go. That's it.
Yeah. So which one are you?
The difference, coach. Yep. I love my students. I love seeing them win. I love when they teach me things. I want to be in a shoot off with him or her. I want them to grind. It's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, that is cool. So what would be a piece of advice or wisdom that you would pass on to the listeners? Like, if you could just summarize one thing, like, I got to pass this info on, what would it be?
I would say what you don't know is going to hurt you.
Oh.
What you don't know, what you don't know is going to hurt you. Be open, be willing to listen. Make sure that the people that are offering you things are reputable, but do your homework, because you gotta try things. You gotta stay the course, and you have to see if it really works for you. And just because it didn't work for him or her doesn't mean that it's not going to work for you. Like, I keep going back to saying, with human beings, A plus B doesn't equal C. And I get it. I love when someone said, have fun. Train. I would say, instead of have fun, I would say train with deliberateness, train with intent, read. If you want to be that proficient, it will be fun.
You're right. That is another hot topic, is having fun. It's the last chapter of my book. It's called Have Fun Again. But I think it is misunderstood a lot. It's not meant to like goof off and not care, but it's meant, don't be pissed off and angry and frustrated and resentful and everything else. Like, if you're spending this much money and this much time and you're leaving your wife and your kids or whatever, freaking enjoy what you're doing, the only way to not enjoy it is the quality of your thoughts. So you're the one that's making it unenjoyable. So have fun. And then it happens to be one more of the elements of the zone. So it's one more thing that you're kind of adding into that little recipe, because nobody that's ever described the zone says that they were pissed off when they were there, or worried or doubtful or anything like that. So it is actually one of the peak performance elements. I think it has to be understood for what it is and not just out there goofing off.
I agree. And no matter, it's funny, when I was in like teaching and just when I mentor anyone or anything, I always say, remember, never go out of style.
Yeah.
And so, like, I may take a 1 out of 6 on a stage and I'll say, thank you, Trevor, have a great day. And I'm like, and internally, I'm just like, what is going on? But I just feel better leaving the stand when I do that. Or like, if someone comes up to me and says, hey, Bill, how's it going? It's going great, thanks. And I just he had a tough station, but we're human beings first, we're shooters second. And I think you got to remember that.
That's some good advice. I do want to tell the listeners that I have some free goodies, whether it's for my mental training or my Mind Mastered or even at my Shotgun Club. If you go to dawngrant.com/free, there's stuff there. Bill, what's your contact info? And do you have a website? You have an email, phone number? What you got?
Yep, it's BillElliottCoaching@gmail.com is my email. BillElliottCoaching.com is my website, and then cell is 440-724-1735. And this was awesome. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to have got to know you better, and looking forward to seeing you
too.
Continue to grow and do what you do and doing what you love. And we'll see you at the next event.
Thank you for joining us on Clay Mastermind with Dawn Grant. Mental excellence and industry insights. Brought to you by the Clay Lab. We hope you found today's episode inspiring and informative. Remember, mastering the mental game is key to unlocking your full potential on the course. And through our conversations with industry leaders, we aim to provide you with valuable insights into the world of clay shooting. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to follow, rate, and share it. For more insights, training tips, and updates on upcoming events, Dawn Grant and Amelia Shotgun Sports are on all social media platforms. Go to dawngrant.com and come shoot at Amelia Shotgun Sports. Stay focused, stay driven, and keep pushing your limits. Until next time, Dawn wishes you success and happiness on your journey to peak performance and industry mastery.